Welcome to our Introduction to Personality Theory course. We continue discussing so-called adjustment domain of personality psychology. In last video, we started to discuss what are personality disorders, how they get diagnosed, and how they're classified in DSM. We finished discussing cluster A of personality disorders, which included paranoid, schizoid, schizotypic personality disorders. And in this video, we will continue with clusters B and C. And at the end of this video, we will discuss prevalence of different personality disorders, so how widespread they are, and we'll discuss possible reasons why actually those personality disorders exist and how people get them. So cluster B starts with so-called antisocial personality disorder, which is actually one of the most difficult to treat personality disorders. So this disorder is characterized by limited capacity for empathy and long-term pattern of disregard or violation of rights of other people. So other notable symptoms usually include impulsivity and recklessness, lack of remorse after hurting others, deceitfulness, irresponsibility, and aggressive behavior. So people with antisocial personality disorder can break all the rules, commit crimes, and don't experience any guilt for them, including having no guilt or shame in punching or hurting or even killing animals and people, which of course makes it very hard to deal with. And also it makes very hard to show empathy to people with antisocial personality disorder, given how potentially hostile they are. But the same way as all people with different mental and personality disorders, they need to receive help and empathy from other people. But again, it's much easier to show empathy to some people who like very introverted and suffer from anxiety compared to people who impulsive, aggressive, and can hurt you. So because of that, people with antisocial personality disorder often do not receive enough help, treatment, and support from mental health professionals, given the nature of this disorder, which is very unfortunate and not fair. So people with antisocial personality disorder should hit at least 3 criteria from the list. First, failure to conform to social norms and laws, they just don't care, indicated by repeatedly engaging in illegal activities. Deceitfulness, indicated by continuous lying, using aliases, or conning others for personal gain or pleasure without feeling guilt. Exhibiting impulsivity or failing to plan ahead. Irritability and aggressiveness, indicated by repeatedly getting into fights or physically assaulting other people. Reckless behavior that disregards the safety of other people. Irresponsibility, indicated by repeating failing to consistently work or honor financial obligations. Lack of remorse after hurting or mistreating other people. And to be diagnosed by this disorder, person should be at least 18 years old and should have evidence of conduct before age of 15. So, and it shouldn't be schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, which is important. So the list of symptoms is very self-explanatory, so you can imagine such a person. Don't pay bills, don't follow rules, do whatever they want, impulsive, irresponsible. Of course, it's almost impossible for such people to work properly at one place, build some long-lasting relationships, because other people don't want to be tricked or cheated or abused, including physical abuse. So all of that pushes those people again to illegal activities, and they often end up into prison. And again, they need help. So the main thing is most of people do not commit crimes and involve in those activities because they have feeling of empathy. Like, for example, if I will start, I don't know, dangerous driving, I might hurt other people and I will feel bad because of that. That's why I won't even start this. People with antisocial personality disorder almost don't have any empathy, and they don't feel any guilt or shame in doing that. So it doesn't stop them, which is very sad. But sometimes those people can be convinced into following rules if they believe that following those rules can benefit them personally. So if we explain and create the system of rules, which is not based on morality and ethics and like feel of guilt or shame when we break it, but it's purely based on profit. Like if I will follow rules, it will give me something good, and if I won't follow rules, it will just won't be beneficial for me. It can force to follow those rules. So antisocial people with antisocial personality disorders can kind of operate in this system, and it might help sometimes. Again, this is probably one of the hardest to deal personality disorders, given the nature of symptoms. But again, those people also need help. The second one is borderline personality disorder. Sometimes it's called emotionally unstable personality disorder, but it's rarely used. Is a personality disorder characterized by a long-term pattern of intense and unstable interpersonal relationships, distorted sense of self, and strong emotional reactions. So people who suffer from this disorder, affected, often engage in self-harm. It's one of the characteristics. Dangerous behaviors, often due to their difficulty with returning their emotional level to a healthy or normal baseline. So basically, they experience so strong emotions connected to relationships that it's very hard for them to return back into calm, normal state. And experience of those strong emotions can push those people into self-harm or other strong, very strong, and sometimes dangerous reactions, and affect their self-concept. So they may also struggle with a feeling of emptiness, fear of abandonment, and detachment from reality. So inside experience of borderline personality disorder is very unpleasant. So 9 signs and symptoms for this disorder, a person should have at least 5. Frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. So people with borderline personality disorder, when they start any type of relationships, especially romantic, they have extreme fear of being abandoned. And they try to do anything not to be abandoned. And by anything, I mean anything. So they can put enormous efforts into this, and some of those efforts and actions they take might be disturbing and frightening to other people. Unstable and chaotic interpersonal relationships, often characterized by alternating between extremes of idealization of their partner, like he or she so perfect, I love them so much, the absolute ideal for me. I dream about our possible future. I want to live with this person until my death, and in afterlife we should be together. And then it changes to devaluations. This person is horrible. I hate him or her so much. The awful, the disgusting. I don't want to spend even a second more with this person, and so on. So it creates so-called splitting. which also, of course, negatively affects relationships. Markedly disturbed sense of identity and their self-image. So on these emotional swings, people having hard times to build their identity and feeling of self, who am I and how I react, because they're overreacting in both ways. And those emotional swings makes everything very difficult. Impulsive or reckless behavior. So while they experience these strong emotions, often connected with relationships and fear of abandonment, to do something with those super strong emotions, people might start take drugs, drink alcohol extensively, start unsafe sex, reckless driving, or binge eating. So all those behaviors here are aimed to somehow normalize emotional state and return back to normal, because the degree of intensity of emotions a person experiences is so discomforting and almost painful. They try to do anything which can kind of calm down those emotions. Unfortunately, most of those things do not help and make things worse, right? So neither binge eating nor unsafe sex is a good long-term strategy. So recurrent suicidal ideation or self-harm. Again, people got so overwhelmed by those emotions, fear of abandonment, that they might use self-harm or even think about suicide. Such an intense and discomforting and painful emotional experience they have. Rapidly shifting intense emotional dysregulation. I think here it's self-explanatory. Chronic feelings of emptiness, inappropriate intense anger that can be difficult to control, so they can explode with anger if something kind of slightly hints for they're being abandoned, or the partner don't like them, or something else kind of threatens their feeling of like safe, secure attachment. And transient stress-related paranoid or severe dissociative symptoms. So those people also might experience derealization or some other things. As you can see, again, the symptoms make the life of people with bipolar disorder extremely difficult. And those people having very hard times both to build romantic relationships and making friends and work. So often they have problems with staying at the same workplace for at least, I don't know, 6 months or a year. So it may be extremely difficult because, again, building any type of relationships might be extremely difficult at this degree of emotional response to everything. So as all other personality disorders, it never goes away, but slowly with time, people with bipolar disorder are getting better and better self-regulation skills. And of course, it significantly improves when they visit counseling psychologists and psychotherapists, because those people can help them and support them in the advancing their emotional regulation skills and self-control, and also grant them some feeling of safety and safe, secured relationships with psychotherapists. I'm sorry, or sorry, counseling psychologists. So it also can be a kind of relationships they can rely on, and it can be a model for helping them to develop healthier relationships with other people. It requires a lot of time and dedication from people with bipolar personality disorder, but again, it can be kind of compensated and with better skills of self-regulation and social skills, they can adjust and get some social adaptation. The next one is so-called histrionic personality disorder, very interesting one. Basically characterized by a pattern of excessive attention-seeking behavior. So people with histrionic personality disorder want others to constantly be focused on them. And for this purpose, they can use seduction and show excessive desire for any type of approval. So people diagnosed with this disorder are said to be very lively, dramatic, vivacious, enthusiastic, extroverted, and flirtatious. So this attention seeking usually begins by early adulthood, often adolescence, and presents in a variety of contexts. A person needs to hit 5 criteria to be diagnosed. They are uncomfortable in situations in which they are not a center of attention, so they need to be a center of attention, like always, always in every situation. So we usually, sometimes we want to be in focus of attention, sometimes not. Sometimes we understand the situation is appropriate to be focused on us, right? It's someone else's birthday party, and those people should be in the center of attention. Unfortunately, for people with attention seeking, it's intolerable. They cannot stop seeking attention, so they want to be a star on every gathering. So interaction with other people is often characterized by inappropriate sexually seductive or provocative behavior. So when they try to grab people's attention, they might use sexual seduction or flirt, even when it's absolutely inappropriate. So it might be professional setting or church, or I don't know, it can be high school students. So unfortunately, again, we use flirt, again, time after time, but we in average understand when situations when it's like appropriate, for example, on the romantic date, and when it's inappropriate, for example, in a job place. For people with histrionic personality disorders, this is a problem. They need attention right now and here, and for them, it's very hard to avoid such type of behaviors. They display rapidly shifting and shallow expression of emotions. So expression of emotions is very kind of bright and dramatic and excessive, but inside they don't feel that much. So expression of emotions by people with histrionic personality disorder is always disproportionate to what they actually feel. So they're slightly upset, but they behave like it's like someone died on their hands. So it's disproportionate. Consistently uses physical appearance to draw attention. Has a style of speech that excessively impressionistic and lacking in detail. So a lot of general stuff with a lot of strong emotional words. Shows self-dramatization, theatricality, and exaggerated expression of emotions like that. So it's very typical, suggestible, so easily influenced by other people and circumstances, which again can be bad if they get bad influence, so someone can trick them very easily. Consider relationships to be more intimate than they actually are, so they always think that people experience more emotions towards them than there really is. So, for example, you rode the bus 2 times and person thinks that you're in crush with them, but you actually just were sitting in the bus. So DSM requires that diagnosis for any specific personality disorder also satisfies a set of general personality criteria, as we discussed. So in modern society, people with histrionic personality disorder often super concerned with the amount of likes and views on their channel, and actually can start very successful channels and media on the internet, giving the nature of their personality disorder. Sometimes it makes them actually very famous social influencers. But of course, influence their like job, romantic relationships, and friendships. because they can't stop do what they're doing, and most of people not happy, right? So if they have romantic partners, of course, romantic partners would be unhappy with flirt and even sexual intercourse with other people, which histrionic personality disorder people might start just to grab an attention, and it doesn't make sense for other people who don't experience this intense need in other people approval. So altogether, again, it's difficult to live with this personality disorders. Those people need support, and they might develop better self-control skills and emotional regulation to adjust it a bit, but again, it cannot be overcome completely. And finally, in cluster B, maybe one of the most famous personality disorders is narcissistic personality disorder, NPD. This disorder characterized by a lifelong pattern of exaggerated feelings of self-importance, excessive need for admiration, which makes it a bit similar to histrionic, but also delusional sense of status, diminished ability or unwillingness to show empathy to other people, and interpersonally exploitative behavior. So it's often comorbid with other mental disorders and associated with significant functional impairment and psychosocial disability. So people with narcissistic personality disorders might have a lot of problems and become a problem for other people. So what are the criteria? So five from 9 here. Grandiose sense of self-importance. So people with narcissistic personality disorder always think that they are more important and significant than others. That their life would be very different from life of average person. That destiny awaits them. That they will commit some, fantastic and grandiose things through their lives, that they will achieve something like at least Nobel Prize level of, approval and so on. So preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, and beauty. So they like to create like fantastic situations where they're like absolutely perfect and all other people, compared to other people, more successful, more smart. They have all the powers. They're the most beautiful, and they're like perfect, and all other people treat them as like demigod or something. Believing that they're special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with special high status people. So they like all like premium, gold, and platinum stuff, and they think that casual people cannot understand their feelings. Requires excessive admiration, so they constantly need to be praised by other people in terms of how ideal they are. So the difference with like histrionic people, they just need attention, and they prefer negative attention to absence of attention. With narcissistic personality disorder, it also always should be admiration, not less. A sense of entitlement, unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with their expectations, being interpersonally exploitative. So because they are important and other people are not, they might take advantage of others and use other people as tools, as just the means to reach their purposes. So they treat other people as non-playable characters from computer games and PCs. Don't think about their feelings and dreams and desires because they are more important. Lacking empathy, so they don't want to recognize feelings of other people. It's irrelevant. And often being envious of others, or believing that others are envious of them and their success. And finally, showing arrogant behavior or attitudes. So as you can see, with all those predispositions, those people can be successful at their job place, can be social influencers, but other people don't necessarily like to work with them, giving their like exploitative interpersonal communication and grandiose sense of self. And of course, those people have extreme difficulties in building close friends and romantic relationships. And they need those close relationships, as all we do. So, and they suffer from feeling of loneliness and emptiness. So often this like grandiose sense of self-importance is just a compensation of internal deficits. And inside, those people suffer and experience a lot of pain, and all this is just a compensation. The problem is that, again, if they go to psychologists, it's extremely difficult to work with patients who have a narcissistic personality disorder. First of all, because they believe they're special and they have unique experiences, and they don't. All we have the same experiences, like at least similar. They often want to choose like super premier, super expensive, super duper psychologists, but often drop out from psychotherapy because when it comes to their vulnerability in working with their like emotional problems and pain and imperfections, they often drop out from psychotherapy because they cannot endure the feeling that they're imperfect. And psychotherapy is basically based on that. You admit that you're imperfect and you have certain problems and you need to develop certain skills. So it makes psychotherapeutic progress very slow in case of people with narcissistic personality disorder and difficult for psychotherapists. But again, those people also need help. But it's not always clear that they need it because like their social image can be like purely based on like super success achievement and so on, and not everyone knows what their experience inside. So let's transit to cluster C, avoidant personality disorder or anxious personality disorder, characterized by excessive social anxiety, inhibition, fear of intimacy, in spite of desire. So this is the difference with cluster A disorders. Severe feelings of inadequacy and inferiority, and over-reliance on avoidance of fearful stimuli. So as you can see, people with avoidant personality disorder is just a dream for people with narcissistic personality disorder because they already have feeling of inferiority and anxiety and can be easily exploited. So those people suffer in different spheres of life and need a lot of help. So those who have this avoidant personality disorder typically display a pattern of extreme sensitivity to negative evaluation. So any type of criticism can destroy their self-esteem. They're afraid of any rejection, believe that one is socially inept or like unappealing to others, and avoid social interactions. So such people can, for example, apply for one job place, get rejection, and never apply to job places again because it was so intensive experience and so awful experience that it's so difficult. So then they try to avoid those situations, which vastly limits the range of social situations they can attend and limits their like functioning. So 4 out of those 7 symptoms should be present. Avoids occupational activities that involve significant interpersonal contact, for example, in-person job place, because of fear of criticism, disapproval, or rejection. Unwilling to get involved with people unless they're completely sure all those people like them, won't hurt them. So they need a lot of additional reassurance, which is, of course, most often is impossible. So all your colleagues and classmates and group mates and professors cannot just come to you and say, oh, I really, really like you. Please be sure that I will never judge you and you will never receive any negative evaluation from me during our collaboration, right? So it's not very realistic, but those people need this. Show restraint within intimate relationships because of fear of being shamed or ridiculed. Again, even in close relationships with friends or romantic relationships, they often be afraid of being criticized, shamed, or laughed. Uh, Preoccupied with being criticized or rejected in social situations, so they pay attention, extreme attention to this. Inhibited in new interpersonal situations because of feeling of inadequacy and very low self-esteem. Views self as socially inept, personal unappealing, or inferior, so it's super low self-esteem, and is unusually reluctant to take personal risks or engage in any new activities because they may prove embarrassing. So even if they want, they will never like take first steps to meet someone, invite someone to a date or anything because of extreme fear of any negative feedback, rejection. Even if it's not negative, they often interpret something relatively neutral as negative. So of course, it all limits their functioning, and again, psychotherapy can help to soften this a bit. So people won't stop worrying about all these situations, but at least they can develop certain copings and social skills to kind of compensate this at least a bit. Next one is dependent personality disorder, DPD. Pervasive psychological dependence on other people is key characteristics. So people with this disorder depend on others to meet their emotional and physical needs, with only a minority achieving normal levels of independence. So basically, even adult people rely on others as if they are like helpless children. So begins in adolescence and presents in all contexts. Symptoms can include extreme passivity, devastation, helplessness, and full dependence on other people. If other people will give me money, I can spend them, but I cannot work myself. If other people will push me, I will, I don't know, study. And if no one take cares of me, I will die alone, and so on. Again, people with dependent personality disorder often target for people with narcissistic personality disorder, and they often form weird type of relationships with each other. So criteria, usually 5 out of all these factors, have difficulty in everyday decisions. So they are indecisive. They ask advice and ask other people to decide everything for them, including reassurance. So what should I buy in a grocery shop? What should I wear? Where should I apply for work? With whom I should be friends? So usually we just decided on our own, making our own decisions, but those people just can't do that. They constantly rely on others. Needs others to assume responsibility for most major areas of their life. Has difficulty expressing disagreement with others, so they can be extremely conformist, being afraid of to disagree with other people, because they afraid of to lose support and stay alone. And this extreme fear connected that they think they won't survive alone. It's a matter of life and death, and they never should contradict other people, which again is highly disadaptive because we constantly need to disagree with other people based on our desires and views, and it's normal, and it doesn't destroy relationships. So you basically can say to some people, I completely disagree with you, and I won't be doing what you suggested. My proposition is different, so we should do that. completely okay. For those people, it's like almost impossible. Have difficulty initiating projects or doing things on their own. So when no one observes them, supports them, and make decisions instead of them, they kind of lack self-confidence and judgment abilities, and lack of motivation. Goes excessive lengths to obtain nurturance and support from others, even if we speak but absolutely adult people. So basically, they want support as like if they would be like 5 years old children. Feel uncomfortable and helpless when alone because of exaggerated fears of being unable to care of themselves. And urgently seeks in other relationships as a source of care and support when a close relationship ends. So if those people have like a romantic breakup or they stop a relationship with some friends, they just immediately need to jump into other relationships because they cannot stay alone even for like several days. It's extremely important for them. And unrealistically preoccupied with fears of being left to take care of themselves. So they're really, really, really afraid of that. So all those characteristics make those people extremely dependent on others, and other people often abuse people with dependent personality disorders, obviously, because those people cannot say no, they cannot say I won't do that, they cannot disagree because of all those fears, and at the same time it makes those people very they can't rely on themselves, so they don't have enough, because of all those fears, they usually don't have enough resources to just live alone, which also makes them vulnerable to abusive relationships. Again, of course, work with psychotherapists and counseling psychologists can help and compensate this to a certain extent, but of course, all those fears and habits at certain extent will persist, as with all other personality disorders, unfortunately. Obsessive-compulsive personality disorder should be clearly distinguished from just obsessive-compulsive disorder. So people with obsessive-compulsive personality disorder very focused on order, schedule, lists, organization, and perfectionism. So basically, it's like extreme perfectionism and seek of order in everything. What are criteria? Four, at least four. Preoccupation with details. So if those people make an assignment for educational purposes, a job project, or they cooking, anything, they preoccupied to make all details like perfectly fit together. So usually we kind of understand that all our assignments and job projects and when we're cooking and cleaning, there would be some level of imperfection and all details cannot be equally important. And we kind of prioritize, okay, so I made a sandwich, it's not a perfect sandwich, but I will eat it and go to work. People with OCPD cannot do this, they preoccupate with detail. They showing perfectionism, which even interferes with task completion. So they can run out of deadline, but they cannot submit their paper, for example, because it's imperfect. They will finish when it's like absolutely finished, even if it like fails deadline or agreements with other people and so on, which leads to problems in education and in job settings. They're very rigid and stubborn, so they don't change their habits, and they're very persistent in their perfectionism and or seeking order. Do not delegate anything to other people, very reluctant. So they try to do everything on themselves because they can't rely only on themselves, and they don't like to delegate to other people. Have excessive conscientiousness up to pedantry. So again, excessive concern with any detail and rule. So everything should be done exactly according to instruction, letter to letter, number to number, page to page, minute to minute. Everything should be perfect. Because of that, they have workaholic behavior. So perfectionism with inability to delegate your job task logically lead to workaholic behavior. They desire to save money, so they can be extremely stringy and don't spend anything on themselves, just saving money to excessive amounts. Inability to discard worn out or worthless objects. So, and basically that's it. So, this personality disorder is also hard to compensate because of this like rigidity and stubbornness of people with OCPD. So working with psychotherapists usually helps to soften perfectionism at least a bit, so people at least can follow deadlines. But probably they will save workaholic behavior and other symptoms, so which can make them like very successful professionals, but again, makes interpersonal relationships very difficult, because imagine like an apartment of this person. So any other living being in this apartment might ruin the order, so they require discipline, extreme discipline from themselves and others, and not all people agree to live in such conditions and build relationships based on such rules. So that's why those people might often be very lonely and need help in building relationships with other people. They want this, but those extreme personality traits and symptoms make it difficult. So we finished with considering all the disorders from the list, all three clusters, A, B, and C. Let's talk about prevalence. So basically, it's about the total numbers of cases presented in population at a certain point of time. So on the screen, you can see a figure which represents which personality disorders are more widespread. So you can see that obsessive-compulsive disorder is the most typical, surprisingly. So narcissistic disorder is very rare in spite of all the stereotypes and so on. So histrionic and dependent disorders go on the second and third place, and schizotypical and I think avoidant finish the first top 5. So what happens with personality disorder and other mental disorders is often called comorbidity. So basically, what happens, people with one mental disorder often have another mental disorder, which kind of makes statistics a bit difficult. So the total prevalence rate for having at least one personality disorder is estimated to be around 15% for the United States. It's American Psychiatric Association data, which means that like approximately 15% of population might have personality, at least one personality disorder. It's actually a lot. And often people can have 2 and even 3 personality disorders at once, and you can only imagine how difficult it is for them and their surrounding to deal with that. So often people don't have just one personality disorder. So again, it's explained through the concept of comorbidity, basically presence of more than one mental disorder, for example, here in one person. So there are some gender differences in prevalence of personality disorders. The one disorder which shows the most difference between men and women is actually antisocial personality disorder. So it happens significantly more often in men than in women. So men suffer from antisocial personality disorder much more often. And 1 out of 20 adult men has antisocial personality disorder, whereas less than 1 in 100 women. So this is a difference in 5 types, which is like super, super a lot. Personality disorders can be caused by a variety of factors. And usually, like in modern psychiatry and clinical psychology, we explain it through biosocial, biopsychosocial model. So explain this through 3 different factors. So, for example, some disorders such as borderline personality disorder primarily connected to childhood experiences, and it's psychological factors such as like trauma. But some like schizotypical personality disorders have more genetic influences. It would be biological factor. And social factors such as like school, family, and social support can either soften manifestation of different disorders or make it more intense, obviously. So different personality disorders have a bit different explanations, but usually it's a combination of all 3 factors, with biological factors being like genetic vulnerability and often some specificity in brain working, including neurotransmitters, a bit different balance of neurotransmitters compared to normal. Often it's traumatic childhood experiences and bad childhood in general, which also can be influenced by very low social economic status, school bullying, for example, economic and political problems. So usually it's a combination of all 3 factors. That's why we use this biopsychosocial model. And what conclusion can we make from those videos on so-called adjustment domain? So personality disorders are one of the type of mental disorders. Mental disorders are much broader group. Personality disorders usually are long-lasting and don't have a clear starting point compared to many other mental disorders. They usually influence all spheres of person's life and influence the cognition, emotions, motivations, and behavior at the same time. Many personality disorders are named with connection to other mental disorders like schizoid personality disorders and schizophrenia, obsessive-compulsive personality disorders, and just obsessive-compulsive disorder, but you shouldn't confuse them. They're very different. And if you read DSM and different textbooks, you clearly can see significant differences, so please don't confuse them. Distinguishing normality and abnormality, as we learned, is actually one of the key problems of psychology, which still waits for creating some kind of more comprehensive, logical final decisions than what we use right now. And DSM-5, now it's DSM-5-TR, includes 3 clusters of personality disorders, 10 disorders in total, which we discussed in detail in previous and this video. The total prevalence rate for having at least one personality disorder is actually quite high, at least 15%, which means that many people you personally know have those personality disorders. The overall prevalence for personality disorders usually fairly equal for men and women, but there are some differences. One of the most clear examples is antisocial personality disorder, which happens 5 times more frequently in men. And all personality disorders have different and usually complex causes, which should be analyzed in the context of biopsychosocial model. I also want to add that people with all personality disorders deserve support and help, no matter how difficult their symptoms are for other people. And with proper work with counseling psychologists and psychotherapists, They can learn new skills, including social interaction, self-regulation, and emotional regulation, which can significantly improve their quality of life and make it much easier for other people to get along with them. Thank you.